Mission at Jinan. Ministry fund for the mission and a separate donation for the family. When I came home to Korea, my wife gave me 1.5 million won, about $1,200, and said it was donated by my seminary colleagues. When I had returned home in August after my short-term mission, I was carrying a letter written by the North Korean brothers to Assistant Pastor Chang An-gu. The letter said that Missionary Kwang has worked hard for them and could not finish his seminary education because of his work with them, and asked the seminary to graduate him without his attending the remaining 3 months of seminary education. Assistant Pastor Gu thought the letter was wonderful, especially because it had been signed with such names as Ikdu, Power, Calvin, etc., and posted it on the seminary's bulletin board for everyone to read. During the opening service of a new semester at the seminary, an offering was collected for North Korean missions and was given to my wife. However, it was far short of the amount I needed for rental of a mission center, several months of living expenses, and my return airfare to China. I prayed and waited for the Lord to provide. Because of my concern for the safety of the brothers, I couldn't go just anywhere, even in South Korea, to raise funds. I was always wary of the possibility that my comments would eventually get to the Chinese or North Korean authorities. After 3 days of fasting, I met with President Wan Kim and presented him with the letter written in August by the North Korean brothers. After President Kim read the letter seeking his commitment to them and asking for help in funding their ministry, he suddenly took out his wallet and handed me 1 million won, $800. He embraced me, patted my back, and told me my work was precious. My wife and children were having a hard life. While I was gone, none of my children had eaten any fruit. I followed my own principle that funds raised for missions should be used 100% for missions, and those raised for support of my family should be used entirely for my family. The only donation for support of my family was the 200,000 won, $160 per month from President Kim. During this visit to Korea, I just didn't have any time to look after my family, so after meeting Eldris Nam of Puksong Church at Sorok Island, I returned to Jinan only 10 days after I had left for South Korea. Assistant Pastor Martyr was at the mission, but I couldn't leave it alone too long. I realized then for the first time that my reluctance to leave was because I had to leave my family behind. I cried continuously during my flight to China and inside the train to Jinan while telling myself that everything was all right because the Lord was with my family. I remembered my 4-year-old daughter's crying herself to sleep every night and praying that Daddy would do God's work well in China and return home quickly. When I arrived back at Jinan, I realized that our quarters were inadequate for mission work in many ways. Missionary Ta had offered us his living quarters, but that was just one room where we slept, ate, and read the Bible. None of us had enough room to even lie down comfortably to sleep at night. Because it was an old apartment building, it wasn't just the people next door who heard us pray, sing, and read the Bible. Our voices shook the entire apartment building. Because of such terrible conditions, the brothers were unable to focus on reading the Bible. When I asked Assistant Pastor Martyr how many times they'd been able to listen to audio tapes of the Bible, he replied they had listened to the New Testament only 2 times. He felt it wasn't good to be loud, so he explained to them how to do Bible meditation, also known as quiet time. If they had followed our former routine, they should have read the New Testament 8 times. However, the brothers' complexions looked better because of their leisure, instead of their adhering to rigid training on a tight schedule. Nevertheless, I felt bad because they looked like they were having a hard time spiritually. North Koreans from the day they are born are brainwashed to idolize Kim Il-sung. They had no choice in the matter. Therefore, when they realized after coming to China that they had been totally deceived, they wanted to believe only what they could see with their own eyes. Because of this background, I never resorted to indoctrination. I avoided any logical teaching method that says, this is like this and this is like that, so you must think like this. Instead, I only had them read the Bible, which is the Word of God, and solve the rest of the problems by relying solely on prayer. If I had approached them from the beginning with an indoctrination method of education, they would never have believed anything I said. Because it included a lot of leisure time, they liked the assistant pastor martyr's approach to daily training. They would never have even dreamed of going outside without my approval, but while I was gone, they even went to a billiard hall and played a game of pool. Assistant Pastor Martyr could not proceed with the training for those 10 days. All he could do was make sure that the brothers stayed put until I returned. As I proceeded to return to our regular training, I decided to fast and pray for the next 5 days. I did it to correct the relaxed atmosphere of the mission center and for my wife and children. After the 5 days of fasting were over, Brother Power asked me very gently, "Teacher, weren't you very hungry?" "No, I'm fine," I replied with a smile as if I were joking. In response, Brother Power smiled and said, "Teacher, if you can think of not having anything to eat after 10 days of starving, that's North Korea." Although I had previously heard many stories about North Korea that were hard for me to relate to, I thought that night that I finally understood them. Nevertheless, the brothers said that my understanding of the situation there was less than half of what they had experienced. During the depths of winter, 4- and 5-year-old children roam aimlessly about on snow-covered streets, and even when they die in front of train stations, they don't cry. They don't need to cry because there's no one they can rely on. They accept death as their fate, don't complain about it, and are found dead the next day. The reality of North Korea is not just starvation. Every day, people die of starvation throughout the country, but they all must believe in Kim Jong-il and his sickening boasts as truth. Having to serve him like God was another suffering that they had to endure. I was told that it was unbearable, as terrible as starvation. It was sad enough to hear of North Koreans dying because of starvation, but what caused me even more grief was their spiritual condition. New brothers came to our mission center. Friends of Brother Power and Brother Ikdu, who had made requests to be accepted 2 months before, came with instructor Kwang. I christened them Ki-pung Yu and John Park. Brother Ki-pung was a soldier in North Korea for 10 years. He worked only at a construction site to build a dam at Mount Kumgang. It was a dam built completely by soldiers. Over 100,000 soldiers lived in the narrow valley of the mountain. At night, the valley became a den of robbers where even the birds must have been afraid to fly. Because of the scarcity of daily necessities, they were soldiers during the day, but at night, they became robbers who would even steal the underwear off another person. Because Brother Ki-pung escaped North Korea after robbing others for 10 years, his narrow eyes, which slanted upward, overflowed with a bloodthirsty look. As for Brother John, he was an older friend of Brother Ikdu from the same village where since 1993, they had worked at the same place. From the next day on, to intimidate us, he went around telling Assistant Pastor Martyr and all the rest of us that he had studied Chinese martial arts for several years. I naturally gasped while looking at the 2 new brothers. I had hoped this time around for some nice and gentle brothers because of the suffering I had undergone in dealing with the previous collection of ruffians. Brothers Ki-pung and John had much to adjust all of a sudden. They had to stop drinking and smoking. They had to change their raw form of speech into respectful Korean, listen to Bible audio tapes all day, and pray for more than 2 hours a day. Furthermore, they were allowed to go outside only once a week. Sitting for a long time was a torture for the 2 men who had been working in a quarry breaking rocks all day. When the 2 brothers fussed because they couldn't handle our training, Brother Power and Brother Ikdu, both of whom had gotten used to the system, shouted at them that they should behave in light of their being accepted after the brothers had prayed about it for 2 months. Brothers Calvin and Sunju devoted themselves to teaching the Bible to Ki-pung and John whenever they were able to find the time to do so. Mother, I cannot come. I became sensitive about the issue of smoking and drinking by the brothers. One day, I felt they had gotten used to life at the mission home, so I had the ones who were on kitchen duty go outside and buy groceries. Ever since I began this practice, I could smell that Brother Moody had been smoking. I knew he was buying cigarettes with the grocery money. Finally, I called him in and asked him directly, "Brother Moody, you're smoking these days, right?" His face turned very red. Since the incident on the train, he had pledged never to smoke. "Yes, I was smoking some leftover cigarette butts." "Brother Moody, please stop studying and leave." His face turned deathly pale at my quiet but very firm voice. He had thought it wasn't a big deal, and he was shocked when he realized that he could get kicked out of the mission center for that. I would never compromise on smoking and drinking. They were supposed to be the ones to save the lost souls of North Korea. Therefore, if they cannot get past the first barrier and overcome this issue, how could they go on to accomplish such a great task? I loved Brother Moody very much, but if he couldn't stop smoking, I decided to send him to another missionary who did charity work. However, he promised over and over that he would never smoke again and that he would never use the grocery money to buy cigarettes again. In the afternoon, Instructor Kwang brought Brother Choi and Brother Joseph Chun, who was a Korean Chinese from Jilin. Ever since we had left for Jinan and got separated from Brother Kilho, we had been without a Korean Chinese translator for our ministry at the mission center. If something happened, this would have been very dangerous because none of us knew how to speak Chinese. We were looking for a Korean Chinese who could help us, but there was no one who was willing to do Bible study with us and work as a translator. Knowing this, Instructor Kwang deliberately went very far out of his way to bring us a translator. Brother Joseph Chun's father was the head deacon at a Korean Chinese church. Therefore, he saw many missionaries from South Korea who came to his house. For whatever reason, Brother Joseph didn't like any of the missionaries and drove them out whenever he saw them. His father, who was very upset over his son's ill behavior, shared his concern about him with Instructor Kwang Ho. Kwang Ho asked Brother Joseph to travel with him to our mission house at Jinan and stay for a month. If he didn't like staying with us, he could always leave at any time, Kwang Ho told him. This was how he brought Brother Joseph to us. Instructor Kwang Ho was fully convinced that Brother Joseph wouldn't leave. I decided to leave this issue up to the Lord. Brother Choi was about 40 years old, but his hairline had already receded. Like Instructor Kwang Ho, he used to be a member of the North Korean Special Forces. Perhaps for that reason, he introduced himself with much bravado. "Teacher from South Korea. I am very different from the average person. When I was in the military, I was in a special unit. I also went to a college in Pyongyang. Did you know that most of the average North Koreans can never even get close to the borders of Pyongyang in their lifetime?" I replied with a smile. "Really? When you come to this mission home, you first have to change your name." "Brother Chol, what should we change your name to?" "Why do we have to change our names? We don't use our real names here." "Really? That is good. What do you think my name should be, teacher?" Everyone here changed their names to people in the Bible. "How about you do the same?" When I asked, he thrust out his stomach and raised his voice as he answered. "If you are assigning me another name, give me the name of someone most high in the Bible." In the Bible, there is the Apostle Paul. He was short like you, Brother Chol, very smart, and had studied a lot. There are many similarities between the two of you. I didn't want to hurt his feelings, so I didn't mention that Apostle Paul was also bald. "All right then, let's use that name." He kind of liked it because he thought I considered him pretty important. This is how Brother Choi became Paul Choi. "Here, we study this book. From now on, you have to read this book." When I put a Bible in front of him, he held it and felt the thickness with his hand. "Teacher from South Korea. I've studied a lot. I can probably read this whole thing in 1 week." "Really? Just 1 week?" I looked at him blankly. He swaggered out the door with the Bible in his hand. A few days later, my wife called to tell me that my mother had become paralyzed and was in critical condition. My heart sank, and I wanted to end the entire ministry so I could hurry to her side. I sat on my bed for a while and stared at the ceiling. I haven't been a good son. Tears flowed down my face. Forgive me, Mother. I cried profusely as I slouched over my bed. My heart pounded with an insistence that I go straight to the airport, but I couldn't. First, I didn't have money for airfare, and second, the mission home ministry wasn't something that could be easily stopped and restarted without damage to the program. Trapped between two obligations, I could only cry my sadness and frustration. Lord, I can't go. You know my circumstances all too well. All the brothers cried and prayed as if it were their own mother who was in critical condition. I cried out, Mother, I love you. Lord, please save her, Lord. Mother, I can't come to you now. I am sorry. Lord, even if you're going to take her, please allow me to see her at least once more before you do. Please take her after I have seen her. I wasn't able to think about anything else for the next couple of days. I called home whenever I found time and quietly prepared my heart for bad news. When I thought about how hard it must have been for my old mother, I could not think of anything good I had done for her, but only the wrongs that hurt her. I told myself again and again that even if the Lord takes her, I have to be thankful. I was also thankful for the brothers who cried and prayed as though this was their own ordeal. A few days later, the Lord answered our prayers. My mother recovered her health. Hallelujah. This confirmed for me more than ever the fact that when you pray, the Lord answers, that there is nothing for us to fear. Of course, this was a given, but this experience in the mission field took my faith to a higher level.